Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar on the first steps in getting started with video analysis. I decided to do this webinar because I know that it can be kind of scary when you're first looking at the new technology and how you're going to implement it, and it can seem overwhelming. So I want to take this webinar and I want to show you that it's just like taking a step. You just have to put one foot in front of the other, take one step at a time, and you'll eventually get there and feel comfortable enough to show and use video analysis in your patient fittings. So let's get started. First, we have initial contact, right? So it's just like putting your foot out there. It's scary. You aren't sure if the ground underneath you is safe. Can you put all of your weight down onto it? So that's kind of how video analysis is. You don't want to do this in front of a patient at first, and you don't want to necessarily, show them that you're not sure of yourself. And so let's say you've taken a video, you get the technical bits about putting the video onto your software, but now what? So let's start to make some observations, and maybe we'll actually, get somewhere. So let's go into our P&O data software and take a look at how we would get started with our single video. So we've got our video up into the cloud, and if you need to look and refresh at looking at, taking the video with your iPad or another device, that would be either a different webinar. Check out our YouTube channel, or you would come over here into the getting started and look at the resources. There's lots of videos there for you. So I'm going to start a single video analysis. And I am going to use Rory, so I'm just going to search for him. Oops. Or I could upload a video as well. So if I haven't, I can go and upload a video. But I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to use Rory affected side. And I'm just going to go ahead and take a look at this. Okay, so what I always try to tell people when they're first getting started with video analysis is that you don't have to know how to use all of the tools right away, okay? So let's take a look at some of the tools. They can be a bit overwhelming. We've got, some easy ones, some circles and some lines. That's the first step. That's your initial contact. Let's just start with those. So we'll take a look at the video. And let's see if we see anything that might be worth mentioning. Well, right now I see that his toes are kind of up in the air and he's already almost to mid stance. So I'm just going to point at that. Point at it. All right. And then I'm going to say, seems like his toes are in the air. Easy as that. It doesn't have to be super complicated at first, and it doesn't have to be super in depth, and it doesn't have to necessarily look at the research or anything like that. Just take an observation and point to something. Another tool that you can use that's great, if you don't want to use your arrow, is circle something. Say, maybe you're not even sure what you think of it yet, but this is concerning is a great comment to make, and you can use that, as you go along. And I can't spell and talk at the same time, so we'll have to forgive me for that. So capture that and submit that. So this can be something that later, let's say, okay, I thought about that. I'm not really sure what I thought about it at the time, but now I can come back up and I can reply and I can add more detail to that observation. So circles, squares, arrows are great things to use to just point out some things that you see in the video that you think need to be mentioned. Doesn't have to be super complicated just yet. Now we'll go back to our presentation and we'll look at loading response. Okay, so the ground seems pretty safe. I've got myself comfortable with, putting some weight into that side. I'm not quite ready to lift up my other foot. I'm not quite ready to show, that I'm completely comfortable with video analysis, but, I'm getting there. So this is where we're going to start to maybe use things like measurements, like length, and that's where we'll go to next. Okay. So we've got the next set of tools here are some freeform. I will show you quickly just how to use some of the line tools. The line tool, this one does not have a reference. Like I always like to show you is that you can change the weight of the line as well as the color of the line. So those are good things to do. This line tool is not going to have any type of orientation. So I can, I can use it to show his shoulder to his hip. But if I wanted to reference that to perpendicular, then I might do this where, let's change that color again, maybe change the weight, we'll make it a dark blue. And if I want to look at his shoulder in reference to the ground and see if it is vertical, I can see, oh, he might actually have a little bit of a lean. So we want to use the tools that are relevant to what we're looking at. So we've got also a horizontal. This one is a great one for looking at the pelvis and looking at the shoulders when we're looking in the coronal plane. So those are really great ones to use for that. So that's going to always stay horizontal. And you can use it also to reference, if the patient is bobbing up and down a lot during their gait cycle. So you can take a look and see at different points. Now, just going back so that I cover all of the tools in this lesson, we'd also want to maybe look at the dot tool, and that I'm going to actually use in my measurements. So let's erase all of these, which we can do with this button of delete all drawings. It's the trash can. So if I want to take a measurement, I first have to calibrate my screen. So I have noted the patient's foot size, and now I'm going to take a measurement here, and I'm going to say that this is 27 centimeters. All right. So if you did not put a piece of tape on the floor, or if you don't have a calibration measurement, the foot size is a really good one to use because it's in the line of progression and we usually have it noted. So let's go back to the beginning, and we're going to start to use that dot tool. So the dot tool is going to be used to capture where he touches the floor first. So as you see here, I'm going to put down my dot, put it at his heel, and then I can actually go forward until he hits again. And then I'll put another dot, and then we'll go forward until he hits again. All right, so now we have our dots down that are going to give us something that we can measure in between. So now let's use our measurement tool, which I like this one because it means that I can move the measurement in between points that might not be exactly in a straight line on the screen. So what that means is if I use this one, it might actually take into account some of the diagonal distance, and I don't really want to measure the diagonal distance. I just want to measure the direct length. So we'll go ahead and use this tool here. So we will measure from here to here, and that's not the best color. So let's get a different color. So again, I can also change the weight of my line, and let's try green. So we'll take the measurement here. Green is not the best color either. Let's get that out of there. Let's try red. Okay, so we can see here that this step was 68 centimeters, and then we're going to take it from this step to this step and see that this one was 67. And I will actually move that one out of the way. So some of the things with the tools is, just really getting them, giving them a play and seeing, where you need to move things out of the way. You don't want this arrow, you don't want that arrow overlapping the other measurement. See how right here I have to lift up this measurement in order to get over my measurement there. So those are just things to, best practices for if you're going to use this for documentation, you want to make sure that your measurements are in a good spot. So here I capture that, and I can add to that this is his step lengths. And those are really good things to take into account when we're progressing with the way that someone is going to, advance in the rehabilitation. Okay, so that is measurements, and there are different measurement tools, so we can actually take a distance this way as well. Not as much of a used tool when we're using it for orthotics and prosthetics and rehabilitation, but it may be that you want to measure if someone is vaulting quite a bit, and you want to measure exactly how much that is. The only thing is you do have to, calibrate that tool as well. So let's see here if we can just look and see what that measurement would be if we tried it out. So we'll take a measurement from his toe to his shoulders. So we've got 126 centimeters there. And if we wanted to go back, we could see, or forward, let's go forward and see if he actually lifts a little bit because he is on his sound side and he may be vaulting. And he does go up just a little bit. So that might be something that we want to use to show how much he is vaulting, to show him how much he could improve on that. So today he's at 131 centimeters of that distance, but if he really tried to lessen his vaulting, he could maybe get down to 128. So that's a goal that he could use. So this would be vaulting. Okay, we'll submit that. All right, so let's go back to our presentation. And we're talking about mid stance now. So mid stance is when we have fully committed. We have put ourselves out there. We've already lifted our foot off. If I don't want to fall, which I spelled incorrectly, then I better get ready to move forward. So let's take a look at that. This is going to be where we might use angles at the knee and the ankle and the foot. These are some of those, the beef of the tools that we can use to show people where they are in relation to normal. So, and this is, really helpful when you're showing patients why they're wearing a device, what the device is doing to help them to protect their joints. So let's go ahead and again delete all of these drawings, but that is a pretty picture right there. Okay, so now we're going to take a look, and let's say that we want to look at the hip. So the hip I like to, well first actually we'll start with the ankle because that is one of the easiest ones. And we saw last week in the Edinburgh Visual Gait Score, or last month, sorry, that we want to look at maximum angles, but a lot of the times we know what we're looking for in gait, not in relation to maximum and minimum, but more so in the phase of gait and how that relates to an angle. So let's say that at mid stance we want to see around a 90-degree angle at the foot. We're going to go ahead and use a free form angle measurement. So you've got three options on your free form angle, which would be the free form, like I said. You've got a vertical and you've got a horizontal. So depending on what you're looking for, you can use these tools. I tend to use a free form a lot because I don't want to necessarily disregard the other axis of the body. I'm not really looking for in relation to vertical or in relation to horizontal a lot. I'm more of looking in relation to the other body segment. So let's look at that. I'm going to change my color to red again, and I'm going to just make that a slightly lighter line. So one thing I like to point out when we're doing angle measurements is that you really should always start from one segment and go to the next to the joint and then to the next distal segment. So what that means is that we don't want to start our angle measurement in the middle of the tibial section because we're introducing room for error. So here we would also want to then go parallel to the 5th met head, just like we use a goniometer. Now you see my measurement. I'm not really happy with that. I don't like using the large angle measurement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my other side first. So I'm going to start at my 5th met head, and I will go parallel to that, and then I will go to my ankle, and then let's try that again. It messed up. And then I will go up, and I will connect it all the way to the knee. So then that way I know that I actually connected it to the knee. I didn't stop short of it. I've got it all the way to the knee, meaning that I've got more reliable of a measurement because I went all the way to the knee. So you see how in this angle measurement, I've actually got him at 85 degrees. So we can say, okay, well, that might mean that 4 foot is a little too soft for him. He might be feeling like he's dropping off because he's in mid stance. He should be feeling full support here. So that is just a way that we can start to look at what the angle measurements might mean. So I'll type my comment here that he has 85 degrees ankle, or I'll say at ankle. Okay, so we'll capture that. So that is, the ankle is one of the easiest ones to do, as well as the knee. The trochanter hip area tends to be where people lose a little bit of reliability because a lot of the times patients are wearing clothes that don't allow us to see everything. So let's just jump to that. If I was looking at the hip angle, I would want to start at the knee. And then, oops, let's try that again. So you just, exit out of it if for some reason it doesn't get to the point where you want it to be. So I'll go ahead and estimate where my trochanter is, and then I will go up to the shoulder. And then that way I'm increasing my reliability. And so I can see here that he's got about 8 degrees of hip flexion. So what I showed you last month was that I sometimes like to use the angle measurement where I'm showing the hip, and it will give me the number that I'm looking for. Now, when I do that though, I want to make sure that I'm not using these tools that show just the vertical. So let's just show here, if I use that here, I would show 14 degrees. I'm not taking into account his trunk flexion. Whereas if I used this measurement tool and I continued down, so first I'll actually draw a line from his shoulder through his trunk, and then if I use this tool, I would see a very large angle, which I don't like. So let's go from here to here. So you'll see that I only get about 9 degrees there. So the idea is to follow the trunk and make that angle measurement. Okay, so that's about it for angles. Like I said, sometimes in the coronal plane you may want to use those that horizontal angle. If you want to look to see if the ASIS, both of them are level, and you could put a number with it, but it's not really used in any of the gait scores as a number, but you can use it. So for instance, we'll just show you right here, if we were showing the difference here. So if we wanted to look and see if his hips were equal. Okay, so we'll trash all of those. And now we're going to think about terminal stance. So at terminal stance, we're feeling confident. Now, unlike this image shows, we're still in single limb support, so we have not put our other foot onto the floor. But what the key point of terminal stance is that we're pushing off. We're trying to get us a little bit further. So that's exactly what some of these tools can do. Once you get comfortable with the measurements and the angles, what can you do to advance yourself even further and push yourself a little bit further? So that's what I want to show you with speed measurements. So speed measurements can be used to measure how fast somebody is walking, and those can be a determinant of a person's safety, of their risk of fall, things like that. So we'll go ahead and go back a little bit, and again we're gonna start to look at when the patient comes in to the screen and as soon as he hits the floor. So we've already calibrated our screen, so we don't have to do it again. And now we're going to get this tool here, which is called the speed tool. So let's pick a different color here. So now, because I've got it at the frame that I want to start at, all I need to do is click down on his heel and then progress it forward, let him walk until I can get to the end. And he touched the floor right here. So that's where I'll put my measurement. Now, this happens a lot where you get a little bit too far along the frame. And so you might just want to back it up. So what we'll do is we'll actually, and you just learn from those mistakes as like, okay, well that's going to make my measurement go off the screen. So I better back up a little bit. So we once again find that place. And then we'll progress forward and we'll take our step right there so that we keep our measurement on the screen. So now he traveled 134 centimeters at 1.11 meters per second. So we can capture that and we'll just note his speed. This is where we can start to use speed as an indicator of how much they're progressing, how, if they're able to advance their speed, it's pretty indicative that they're advancing in their rehab. Now, because speed is a measurement that should be a self-selected speed, you don't want to start taking it, you don't want the patient to be over here where they're just starting on the right at that line and then they're starting on camera. So you would actually want them to get a few steps in before they come into the screen, before you start taking their speed measurement. And you also want to have them be able to take a few steps afterwards, otherwise the speed measurement won't be really that true. All right. Okay, so now we're looking at pre-swing. Okay, so pre-swing is really that phase of I've got this down. I'm going to take one step at a time, and I'm feeling pretty comfortable. And so this is where you might want to introduce some dual video comparisons. So I will show that really quickly as how we can do some video dual comparison. So we've got our single video, which we did here. Now we'll go back here and do a dual video, and really that's a whole webinar in itself, so I will save that for another time. But when you do get to dual, what you want to do is put both of the videos side by side. So let's say that we have Rory in session 1 and we have Rory in session 2. So we would actually pull those up together. They'll show up on the screen. And I will go into a complete webinar on this in its entirety. But if you want to give it a try in the meantime, you basically use the same tools that you're going to use. You do want to have them filmed in the same orientation, at the same distance from the patient. That way you get real good observable that you can actually use to compare. So your measurements are going to relate to one another. Otherwise, if you took the video at different spots, they might not be as reliable, but you can you can still do one video analysis and then do another video analysis and take a look at the two. But here we can actually use this little tool here. This is actually going to allow us to align the videos and allow us to change our view. So let's say we wanted to actually look at the videos up and on top of one another. And so what we'll do is we'll go and we'll look, and we can actually move the video too so that we can see him. And let's say we want to align these, we would look for our initial contact at the top video and then our initial contact at the bottom video. So these are in different orientations, so as you'll see, not going to be helpful, but we'll take a look and see how it looks anyways. So there's his initial contact. Now he'll walk towards each other and he'll be in sync, hopefully. So obviously you've taken the videos at different times and they're not going to be in perfect sync, but if you do it correctly, then you can start to see his comparison in each phase side by side. So as I said, I would go into that in more detail in a completely different webinar. But dual video really is the taking the next step and showing your patients, how they're progressing. After that is swing phase. That's when you're cruising. You're able to show your patients the video analysis tools with them in the room. And that is really where, that's when swing phase comes into play, because you're just cruising along and you're able to get comfortable enough to show and use these tools with your patients and bring the iPad over to them and show them what you're seeing, or have a video camera in your office and put a big screen TV up so that you can show them what I'm showing you here on the screen so that they can see themselves and how they're walking and how they're progressing. And that's really the next step, and that's when you're cruising. There's one last thing that I wanted to show you guys today with just a little bit of time left. I know that we're always running a little tight, but this is a sneak peek of what the next tool is that would be available in P&O Data Solutions. So it is only in Kara's demo zone right now, so I'm just going to show it to you really quickly. What this tool is it's called a Digitizer, and it is going to allow you to take data points and put them into an Excel spreadsheet. So here I will just show you how this works. What this is going to do, and we'll go back and use Rory again, is it's going to allow you to click through and collect data points and then put them into an Excel spreadsheet. So if you're ever involved in research, or if you're interested in getting involved in research, this is a way that you can use some pretty hefty data. So it will take somebody to analyze the data, so just keep that in mind, but it is pretty cool how you can really start to collect some main data points, and a lot of them. So first we're going to choose a data model, and we are doing the single lower limb. And so as you can see here, it has brought up all of my segments that I need to pick, and it's going to start collecting data. So you just click anywhere to start. And then as he comes into the screen, we're going to start to gather his data. So here we'll take his hip, and then his knee, and this is not showing it very well, and then his ankle, and then his foot. And then I will continue to do that. So let's bring him into the screen a little bit more. All right, so here we've got his hip, his knee, his ankle, and his foot. And then the Digitizer automatically progresses it to the next frame for you to pick the data points again. So if you're going to be using the Digitizer, this might be the time when you would start to use markers, because then you can really make sure that your Digitizer data is good. But guys, this is like Vicon type of data that you're going to get out of this spreadsheet. So if I went through and did all of these data sets, I would get those data. So I can download that as a CSV file and I export it. And I have only collected a few, but look at all of that data I have. Now, I don't want to analyze that, and you might want to get someone who's more of a professional at analyzing all of this data if you're going to be using research in your practice. So that's pretty cool. If you're interested in anything like that, if you're doing any type of research at your facility, let us know, because this is pretty good amount of data for a facility just utilizing two-dimensional video analysis. And if anybody has any questions, I am happy to take them.